So good. Much better than the ravioli that I have in America. Oh, hey guys. Didn't realize you were here. Well, I guess since we're all here together now, we'll go ahead and go over lesson 6, which is on time and motion. So let's go ahead and get started. Alrighty. So time and motion, one of our elements in our last time together. Lesson 6 is on time and motion, which are sort of in between, I think, the elements and the principles as far as like where they fit in terms of art. Um, but you'll kind of see why. This is a rather short lesson, but just want to kind of explain like how to interpret time and motion in artworks. So time, this is something that is invisible, but it can be made perceptible in art. We see there is two types of art or two types of time that are taught and are seen in our artworks. The first that I've got here is the non-Western culture that teaches time as being a cycle. And we can reference this piece down here. It's the Dancing Shiva, which is one of the gods of Hinduism. The Dancing Shiva here, this is telling a story about and again, these both of these pieces that we see here, they're telling a religious story of somewhat, and they have very different ways of doing so. So let's try to compare these two pieces together when we're talking about this concept of non-Western versus Western way of seeing time in art. So the Dancing Shiva, this is a story about the Dancing Shiva trampling the gods of ignorance, is how Google describes it. Essentially, though, this is a dance that went on for several days, and eventually Shiva was able to defeat this god, this demon, or this monster of ignorance. We see this dance being very in motion, in like a movement transition kind of feeling to it, due to like the different diagonal lines that we see sort of intersecting in this circle. And then this actual circle itself on the outside shows various hand movements as it goes around to indicate that this dance went on for a very, very long time. It was, it was just this constant motion over and over and over again until the god of the demon of ignorance was defeated. And so again, this is just telling the story and showing it how it's this circular, this cycle, if you will, of a thing. It always comes back to one another as a circle does, where a circle is like an infinite shape. The line that connects the circle will go around and around and around forever. And that's how non-Western culture views time in general, as a cycle, rather than it being a straight line from like point A, your birth, to point B, which is your death, in like a straight linear fashion. I've got a comparison up here. This is what Western culture teaches us, that time is linear. And this is the meeting of St. Anthony and St. Paul, these two characters that we see repeated 3 times throughout this painting. I'm going to talk a bit about our elements here, and showing how psychic line factors into time pieces a lot of the time. So not only do we have this road that seems to kind of be zigzagging back and forth until we get to the front here, but we also have this psychic line that tells us that this top left corner here, that's the farthest away from us, that is both like visually the thing that's farthest away from us and mentally in this story. We have them connecting here. They kind of like join together. And as they walk, as the line of vision and the path leads us from left to right here, we end up at a second pair of figures. Some time has passed here, and we kind of can tell that the characters are getting to know each other a bit better. We follow that line of vision again, and we kind of go off the page, and so we loop back in with the path and get to the end here, where the two figures once again end at, they start at point A up here, and they go doop doop doop, and they end up at point B, where they're parting ways. So this is another way to tell a story in a more linear fashion, not in a cycle like the non-Western culture does. And just to be clear, we as Americans follow Western culture. Whenever I refer to Western culture, I'm referring to like the European culture, but also to America as well. We are considered to be Western culture from like Central Asia and Africa. So and then non-Western culture is going to be like our African countries, our Asian countries, and other countries that are more Eastern. Another indication of time is through comic books. So comic books kind of play on what we already know about reading and understanding, like a sense of time elapsing from left to right or through a story. So a comic book can do the same thing. It follows that pattern of starting, for us anyway, at the top left-hand corner of a book or of a comic book or, a newspaper, wherever, and it leads us from left to right. So without thinking about it, you automatically will read this story from the left panel right here to then the middle to then the third. And that's just a play on, what we know about reading, and comics, use that to their advantage, just as writing does. Alrighty, this piece here, this is one of those slide identifications that we're going to see pop up in our final exam. And so I feel like this is the best place for it to fit in. This is Marcel Duchamp's Nude Descending a Staircase. And this is also a piece that we will see pop up in our art history unit as well, but I've got it in a couple places just so it sticks. So this is an indication of motion in an artwork. Motion that we see here, and honestly, without this like little title that we've got here, this piece might seem just altogether non-representational, not even abstract. But with the Nude Descending a Staircase, we can start to connect the figure in a sort of abstracted way. So imagine like when this piece was made in like the 1930s, we're still thinking about like film and like capturing like movement as still frames rather than it being like this digitized like full strain of information that's received. Back in the early 1900s, we see that like movies and film are single frames, like captured over and over again rapidly, rather than it being just one consecutive film. And so Marcel Duchamp is sort of playing on that idea, whereas like instead of just having one frame, we've got multiple frames overlapping all at once. So if you can think about like, old theater movies where they've got those like little film strips, if you were to like take one frame and stack it on top of another and another and another and another, it would probably look something like this, maybe a little bit less abstract, but the information would all be overlapping and happening at the same time. So it would be harder to understand. But essentially what Marcel Duchamp is doing here is capturing a moment in time in a single frame with this one painting that he has here. If you can't see the figure, sometimes my classes can't see the figure, but we've got the figure starting up here at the left top side, and then slowly descending from right here to about right here, going down the stairs. The legs you can see down here are sort of like in motion, like where it kind of gets fuzzy when you move your hand back and forth or your legs back and forth quickly. It's not really like a still thing anymore. It becomes like a more wide use of space. And same with like the rest of the figure up here, the arms sort of moving and getting jagged, and the information becomes confusing. But it still is representative of a nude descending a staircase. So this piece would be abstract art as well, would not be non-representational. This is depicting something, but in an exaggerated or distorted way. But also not representational because this is not exactly the way something looks that we see. So this is it for time and motion. It's again a quick little lesson. In our next lesson, when we come back, we'll talk about the principles of design. And I'm excited to talk about those with you guys. So I will see you then.